The Emperor's twins wouldn't eat until a human single dad said, "Open wide for the airplane." Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The imperial palace of the Valyrian Empire stretched across 3 moons, its crystalline spires piercing the violet sky, but within its most secure nursery, 2 tiny heirs were staging a hunger strike that threatened to topple a civilization spanning 800 star systems. Nathan Brooks, the human janitor who had just finished mopping the corridor outside, had no idea his life was about to change forever. Nathan had been working on the Valyrian home world for 6 months, one of only 12 humans in a sector dominated by the towering blue-skinned Valorans. He had taken the custodial job after his wife passed away, needing steady work that would let him support his 4-year-old daughter, Emma, who is currently enrolled in the station's multi-SES daycare. The pay was decent. The Valorans largely ignored him, and he could send money back to Earth to help his sister finish her medical degree. It was simple, quiet work, which was exactly what he needed. While he rebuilt his life, he was emptying his cleaning cart when the nursery doors burst open. A tall Valyrian female in elegant medical robes stumbled out, her normally regal bearing replaced by something approaching panic. Her name was Physician Caller, and Nathan had seen her exactly twice before, both times walking with the kind of composure that suggested she could perform surgery during a meteor strike. Now her golden eyes were wide and her typically perfect hair hung loose around her shoulders. "You," she said, pointing directly at Nathan. "Human, what is your designation?" Nathan blinked. Nathan Brooks, ma'am. Custodial services, 3rd shift. "You have offspring, correct?" Caller asked, stepping closer. "I have seen you with a small human child." "Yes, ma'am, my daughter Emma, she's 4. Nathan felt a prickle of concern. "Is something wrong with the daycare?" No, your child is fine." Caller made a dismissive gesture, then seemed to reconsider her tone. "Forgive my abruptness. I am dealing with a crisis of unprecedented magnitude. Tell me, Nathan Brooks, are you skilled in the feeding of human young?" Nathan almost laughed. Of all the questions he had expected, that was not one of them. "I mean, yeah, I feed Emma every day." "What?" Caller grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Come with me now. Your empire needs you." Before Nathan could protest, he was being pulled through the nursery doors into a room that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought comfort was measured in square footage and expense. The nursery was enormous, with holographic projections of peaceful landscapes rotating across the walls. Medical equipment that probably cost more than Nathan would earn in 10 lifetimes hummed quietly in the corners. And in the center of it all, in a massive cradle carved from what looked like a single piece of moonstone, 2 infants wailed with the fury of tiny tyrants. 3 more Valyrian physicians surrounded the cradle, all looking equally distressed. One held a bottle that glowed with what Nathan assumed was formula. Another held some kind of scanner. The third was actually ringing her hands. "They will not eat," Caloris said, her voice tight, "for 37 hours. The Imperial twins have refused all sustenance. They are not ill. They are not injured. They simply refuse to eat." Nathan approached the cradle carefully. The twins were maybe 3 months old if he was judging Valyrian development correctly. They had the same blue skin, as all Valorants, though theirs was a lighter shade, almost lavender. Their eyes, when they opened them between screams, flashed gold. They were actually kind of cute in an alien baby sort of way. Have you tried different formulas? Nathan asked. 17 variations, one of the other physicians said miserably. All rejected. Different temperatures, 18 temperature settings from below ambient to precisely body temperature, different bottle designs, 23 different feeding vessels, including traditional Valyrian designs and imports from 6 allied species. Nathan whistled softly. Okay. And they're definitely healthy, nothing medically wrong. We have scanned them 40 times. Caller said. They are perfectly healthy. They are simply choosing not to eat, and if they do not eat soon, the Emperor will execute every physician in this facility. That made Nathan's eyebrows shoot up. Execute for babies not eating. These are not merely babies. These are the crown prince and crown princess of the Valyrian Empire, heirs to 800 star systems, the Emperor's only children after 2 centuries of trying to produce offspring. Caller's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. If they die, the succession crisis will tear our empire apart. We are talking about potential civil war. Nathan Brooks. Billions of lives hang in the balance. Nathan looked at the screaming infants with new understanding, no pressure. Then what are their names? He asked. The physicians looked at each other, confused. They have not yet been formally named, Caloris said. They will receive their imperial titles when they reach their first year. Until then, they are simply the crown heirs, right? But what do you call them? Like day-to-day. More confused looks. We call them the male heir and the female heir. Nathan shook his head. That's not going to work. Babies need names. My Emma wouldn't eat for anyone until we found just the right nickname for her. He looked at the twins, thinking the boy was slightly larger with a tuft of what might eventually be hair. The girl was smaller but seemed to have better lung capacity, judging by the volume of her screaming. How about Max for the boy and Lily for the girl? Nathan suggested. Just temporary until they get their fancy imperial names. This is highly irregular, one of the physicians protested. So is letting them starve. Nathan pointed out. Look, I'm not saying I can fix this. I'm a janitor, not a baby expert. But if you're desperate enough to drag me in here, you might as well let me try my way. Caller studied him for a long moment, then nodded sharply. Very well. What do you require? First, everyone out except you. Too many people make babies nervous. Second, I need a chair. Third, dim those lights. This place is brighter than a surgical suite. And fourth, can you put on some gentle music, something soft, not whatever that is. He gestured at the holographic landscapes, which were apparently accompanied by a low, rhythmic humming that sounded like whale song performed by synthesizers. The physician scrambled to comply. Within minutes, the room had been transformed. The lights were dimmed to a soft glow. Gentle music that actually sounded like a lullaby played from hidden speakers. A comfortable chair had been brought in, and Nathan found himself alone with Caller and 2 screaming alien babies who held the fate of an empire in their tiny clenched fists. Okay, Nathan said, rolling up his sleeves. Let's start with you, Max. He reached into the cradle and carefully lifted the baby boy. Max weighed maybe 8 lb, lighter than Emma had been at the same age. Baby continued to scream, his little Face scrunched up in fury. I know. Buddy, I know, life's tough when you're 3 months old. Nathan settled into the chair, cradling Max against his chest. Caller, can you hand me one of those bottles? She passed him a feeding vessel. That looked more like a piece of abstract art than a baby bottle. Nathan examined it, found what he thought was the nipple, and offered it to Max. The baby turned his head away, still screaming. Not a fan of modern art, huh? I get it. Nathan tried adjusting the angle, the position, the temperature by holding it against his own lips first. Nothing worked. Max wanted no part of it. Then Nathan remembered something his own mother had told him when Emma was going through a difficult phase. Sometimes babies don't want efficiency. They want connection. Hey Max, Nathan said softly, looking down at the screaming infant. You want to know secret? When my Emma was about your age, she wouldn't eat either. Drove me crazy. I tried everything, every bottle, every position, every trick in the book, and you know what finally worked? Max's screaming had actually decreased in volume slightly. His golden eyes opened, staring up at Nathan's face. I started talking to her, not baby talk, not goo gaga nonsense, real talking. I told her about my day, about how the stars looked from Earth, about her mom and how much she would have loved her. Nathan's voice caught slightly, but he kept going, and while I talked, I stopped trying to force the bottle. I just held it there, nice and gentle, and let her decide when she was ready. He demonstrated holding the bottle near Max's mouth, but not pushing. Your call, buddy. I'm not going anywhere. We can sit here all night if you want. Max stared at him for another few seconds, then almost tentatively turned his head and latched onto the bottle. He began to drink. Caller gasped. He's eating by the stars. He's actually eating. Don't celebrate yet, Nathan murmured. Keep it calm. Babies can sense tension. Max drank for about 30 seconds, then pulled away, apparently satisfied for the moment. Nathan gently patted his back, and the baby let out a burp that would have made a drunk sailor proud. Good job, Max, Nathan said with a grin. He looked at Caller. Okay, let's try round two. Can you hand me Lily? The next 20 minutes were a delicate dance. Nathan alternated between the twins, talking to them in the same calm, steady voice. He told them about Emma's favorite bedtime stories, about the time she had decided to feed herself and ended up wearing more food than she ate, about the park on Earth where he used to take her with the big oak tree and the ducks that weren't afraid of people, and slowly, steadily, both babies began to eat. They didn't eat much at first. A few sips here, a few there, but it was progress, real, measurable progress. Caller monitored them with her scanner, her expression shifting from concern to confusion to something like wonder. Their metabolic levels are stabilizing, she reported. Blood chemistry normalizing. This is remarkable. It's not that remarkable, Nathan said, adjusting Lily in his arms. Babies are babies. Doesn't matter what planet they're from, they need to feel safe. All this fancy equipment, all these sterile procedures, it probably scared them. They're just kids. They want warmth and comfort and someone who treats them like people instead of political problems. He looked down at Lily, who had finally stopped crying and was watching him with wide, curious eyes. Isn't that right, sweetness? You just wanted someone to talk to you like a person. This makes no sense by Valerian standards, Caller said, but she was smiling. Our infant care protocols are the result of centuries of scientific research, temperature, controlled environments, optimal nutrition, scheduled feeding times. Yeah, well, humans have been raising babies for thousands of years without any of that, and we turned out mostly okay. Nathan shifted Max to his other arm. Sometimes the old ways work. Sometimes you just need to make airplane noises and pretend the spoon is flying into a hangar. I do not understand that reference here. I'll show you. Nathan picked up the bottle, swooped it through the air in a gentle arc, and made a soft, whooshing sound. Okay, Lily, here comes the airplane. Open wide for the airplane. Whoosh. Lily's eyes followed the bottle, fascinated. When it reached her mouth, she latched on and drank eagerly. Calorie stared. You made sound effect, and the infant responded. Babies like sounds. They like play. They like feeling like eating is fun. Instead of a medical procedure, Nathan made the airplane noise again for Max. It's not about efficiency, it's about making them feel comfortable enough to want to eat. Over the next hour, Nathan cycled through his entire repertoire of dad tricks: the airplane, the train, entering the tunnel, the magic, disappearing and reappearing bottle, peek-boo with his free hand, silly faces, gentle songs that he barely remembered the words to, making up lyrics as he went, and through it all the twins ate. Not huge amounts, but enough. Enough to bring their levels up, enough to stabilize them, enough to prevent a crisis. When both babies were finally fed, changed, and sleeping peacefully their cradle, Nathan stood up slowly, his back aching from sitting in one position for so long. Caller immediately began scanning the twins again, her expression one of pure relief. Vital signs stable, nutritional uptake within acceptable parameters. They are sleeping peacefully. She looked up at Nathan with something approaching reverence. You saved their lives. You may have saved our entire empire. I just fed some babies, Nathan said with a shrug. Nothing heroic about it. The Emperor will wish to reward you. Not necessary. Really, I'm just glad they're okay. But caller was already activating communicator on her wrist. Imperial command, this is physician caller. Inform His Majesty that the crisis has been resolved. The heirs are feeding successfully. She paused. Yes, I am certain we had assistance from an unexpected source. Nathan was trying to quietly edge toward the door when it burst open. A Valyrian male strode in. Nathan immediately knew this was someone important. The man was over 7 feet tall, with deep blue skin that seemed to shimmer with power. He wore robes that were probably worth more than Nathan's childhood home, and he carried himself with the kind of authority that suggested he had never been told no in his entire life. Where are my children? The Emperor demanded. Sleeping, Your Majesty, Caloris said, bowing deeply. He healthy and fed. Emperor rushed to the cradle, his stern expression melting into something soft. As he looked down at the sleeping twins, he touched each of their heads gently as if confirming they were real. How? Every report said they refused all sustenance. We had help, Your Majesty. Caller gestured to Nathan, who wished very much that he had made it to the door 30 seconds earlier. The Emperor and Lt. Unk and GT's gaze fell on him, and Nathan felt the weight of it like a physical thing. This was a being who ruled 800 star systems, who commanded fleets that could shatter planets, who held the power of life and death over billions. And Nathan was a janitor who had gotten baby formula on His uniform, you, the emperor said, you did this, you made my children eat. I just fed them, your majesty, Nathan said, attempting an awkward bow that probably looked ridiculous. They were scared, needed someone to talk to them. Like babies instead of heirs to an empire. The emperor stared at him for a long moment, then to Nathan's shock he laughed. It was a deep booming sound that seemed to shake the room. Treated like babies instead of heirs, of course. We were so focused on their importance that we forgot they were children. He stepped closer to Nathan, studying him. You are human, yes, one of the newer species to achieve faster than light travel, yes sir, Nathan Brooks from Earth, and you have experience with young. I have a daughter, Emma, she's 4. You raised her alone. My wife passed away when Emma was 6 months old. So yeah, it's been just the two of us. The emperor's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. Single parenthood, even among Valorans. That is considered one of the most difficult challenges. You have my condolences for your loss and my respect for your dedication. Thank you, your majesty. The emperor looked back at his sleeping children, then at Nathan again. I wish to hire you. I'm sorry. What? My children require a caretaker who understands how to care for them as individuals, not as political entities. You have demonstrated this ability. I wish you to become their primary child care provider. Nathan's mind reeled. Your Majesty, I'm a janitor. I'm not qualified to care for imperial heirs. I don't know anything about Valyrian development or culture, or you know how to make them feel safe. You know how to make them eat. That is more than my entire medical staff accomplished in 37 hours. The emperor's tone left no room for argument. You will be provided with appropriate quarters in the palace. Your daughter will be given the finest education available in the empire. You will have access to all necessary resources and support staff, and you will be paid a salary befitting your importance to my family. But I don't know anything about being a royal nanny. You are not a nanny, you are a child care specialist, and you clearly know more than you think. The emperor smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Besides, you can learn Valyrian customs. What you possess cannot be taught from books. The ability to see my children as children first and heirs second, that is invaluable. Nathan thought about his tiny apartment in the station's human quarter, about the bills that were always just barely getting paid, about Emma who deserved so much more than he could give her on a custodial salary, about the fact that he had just been offered the opportunity of several lifetimes, and about the 2 sleeping babies in the moonstone cradle who had just needed someone to treat them like babies. Can I think about it? Nathan asked. I need to talk to my daughter, make sure she's okay with this. The emperor nodded. Of course. Take 24 hours, but know that I am not accustomed to being refused. Nathan Brooks, I very much hope you will accept. Nathan was escorted back to his apartment in what could only be described as a daze. His mind was spinning with possibilities and concerns. In equal measure, he was supposed to start his shift in 2 hours, mopping floors and emptying waste receptacles. Instead, he might be about to become the caretaker for the 2 most important children in 800 star systems. He found Emma still at the daycare playing with a group of Valerie children who were roughly her age. She was building something elaborate with blocks, her tongue poking out in concentration. The way it always did when she was focused. Daddy, she spotted him and ran over, throwing her arms around his legs. You're early. Hey, baby girl, I need to talk to you about something big. They sat down in a quiet corner of the daycare and Nathan tried to explain the situation in terms of 4-year-old would understand, so you know how you were sad that we couldn't go to the nice park anymore because it costs too much. Emma nodded solemnly. Well, I got offered a new job, a really important job, taking care of 2 babies who are very, very important, like a daddy job. Kind of like that, yeah, and if I take it, we would get to live in a palace. Real palace with towers and pretty gardens and lots of space, and you would get to go to a really great school with other kids. Emma's eyes went wide. Palace like a princess? Well, you wouldn't be a princess, but we live in the same place as the real prince and princess. The babies I'd be taking care of. Would I get to play with them? Maybe. When they're older, yeah, Emma thought about this very seriously. Would we have our own rooms? I could have my own room. Nathan had to swallow past a lump in his throat. Their current apartment was a single room with a petition. Emma had never had her own space. Yeah, baby. You'd have your own room, we both would. And you'd be happy, not sad like you were sometimes. That question hit harder than Nathan expected. He thought he'd been hiding it well, the grief that still sometimes overwhelmed him in quiet moments, but kids saw everything. I think I'd be happy, he said. Honestly, I think it would be a good thing for both of us. Emma hugged him tightly. Then we should do it, Daddy. The babies need you like I need you. 22 hours later, Nathan stood before the Emperor in a formal receiving room, Emma holding his hand and wearing her best dress. He had spent the previous day being briefed by what felt like an army of palace staff. He'd learned about Valerie and infant development, which was actually surprisingly similar to human development. In the early stages, he'd been given a crash course in imperial protocol. He'd been assigned a team of assistants who would handle everything from preparing bottles to managing his schedule, and he'd been offered a salary that made his eyes water. I accept your offer, Your Majesty, Nathan said. Formally, I'll do my best to care for your children. The Emperor smiled. Excellent, then let us begin immediately. I wish to observe your methods so that I might better understand my own children. That was how Nathan found himself giving the Emperor of 800 star systems a lesson in basic child care. He showed him how to hold the babies so they felt secure, how to test bottle temperature on your wrist, how to make silly faces to distract them during diaper changes, how to read their different cries and understand what they needed, and most importantly, how to talk to them like they were people. Tell them about your day, Nathan instructed, demonstrating with Max. Doesn't matter if they understand the words, they understand the tone, they understand that you're engaging with them as individuals. Emperor held Lily awkwardly at first, his powerful hands uncertain with something so small and fragile. But when he started talking to her about the trade negotiations he'd sat through that morning, the baby's eyes locked onto his face with clear interest. She's listening, the Emperor said with wonder. Of course she is. You're her dad. Your voice is the most important sound in her universe right now. Over the following weeks, Nathan settled into a routine that was bizarre and wonderful. In equal measure, his days were spent caring for Max and Lily, who quickly became the center of his world. They were good babies, all things considered. Max was curious and intense always, studying everything with those sharp, golden eyes. Lily was more social, smiling early and often, especially when Nathan made his ridiculous airplane noises. Emma adapted to palace life with the resilience of childhood. She made friends with the children of palace staff, explored every corner of the massive complex, and started attending a school that was teaching her 3 languages simultaneously. She visited the nursery often, fascinated by the baby prince and princess. "They're so small," she said one day, carefully touching Lily's hand. "Were I that small?" "Daddy, you were exactly that small. Maybe even smaller. Did you do the airplane thing with me every single day?" Emma grinned. "Can I try?" Nathan supervised, while Emma, with the careful concentration of a 4-year-old given an important task, fed Lily her bottle, complete with enthusiastic airplane noises. Lily seemed delighted by the different voice, kicking her little legs happily. "I'm good at this, Daddy," Emma announced. "You really are, baby girl." The Emperor visited the nursery daily, often staying for hours. He learned to change diapers, something his staff whispered had never happened before. He mastered the art of the burp cloth. He discovered that Max would stop fussing instantly if you sang to him, even if you were terrible at singing. One evening, Nathan found the Emperor sitting in the rocking chair, both twins asleep on his chest, singing what sounded like a Valerie lullaby in a voice that was surprisingly gentle. "They won't sleep in the cradle tonight," the Emperor said without opening his eyes. "They wish to be held." "Babies are like that sometimes," Nathan said, settling into the other chair with a tablet full of developmental notes. "They're figuring out that they're separate people from you. It makes them want extra contact for reassurance." "How do you know these things?" "Mostly trial and error with Emma, some reading, a lot of asking my mom for help over video calls." Nathan smiled. "Parenting isn't really about knowing everything. It's about paying attention and adapting. I ruled the largest empire in this sector for 90 years before these two were born," the Emperor said. "I negotiated treaties with species that communicate through quantum entanglement. I personally led fleets in 3 separate wars, and yet 2 infants have humbled me more thoroughly than any enemy ever could. They're good at that. It's kind of their superpower." The Emperor laughed softly, careful not to wake the twins. "Nathan Brooks, I believe hiring you may be the single best decision I have made in my entire reign. I'm just feeding babies. Your Majesty, you are teaching an emperor how to be a father. That is considerably more valuable." As the months passed, Max and Lily grew and developed. Max's first word was a Valyrian term that roughly translated to more, which he used exclusively when demanding additional story time. Lily's first word was Nana, which was as close as she could get to Nathan's name. The entire palace staff nearly had a collective heart attack over the informal nickname, but Nathan thought it was perfect. Emma appointed herself the twins' big sister, a role she took extremely seriously. She taught them patty cake as soon as they could control their hands. She insisted on helping pick out their clothes. She gave them tour of the palace gardens, explaining which flowers were which, even though they were far too young to understand. This one is a moon blossom, she told 6-month-old Max, holding him carefully. While Nathan supervised, they only bloom at night, and this one is a star. Thistle, it looks pretty, but it's pokey, so we don't touch. Max grabbed for the flower anyway because he was 6 months old and impulse control was not yet in his vocabulary. Emma gently redirected his hand, just like Nathan had taught her. No, baby prince, pokey means we look with our eyes. Nathan felt his heart swell with pride. His little girl was growing up kind and patient and responsible. Despite everything they'd been through, despite the loss of her mother, despite being uprooted from everything familiar, she was thriving. The palace became a second home. Nathan's quarters were larger than any place he'd ever lived, with an actual separate bedroom for Emma that she had decorated with drawings and toys. He had a staff of assistants who helped with the twins' care, but he remained their primary caretaker, the person they reached for when they were scared, one whose voice could calm them down. When nothing else worked, the emperor consulted him on everything related to the twins, what kind of solid foods to introduce and when, whether it was too early to bring them to public events, how to handle sleep training. Nathan found himself in the bizarre position of being the emperor's parenting advisor, something that would have seemed absurd 6 months ago. They're starting to teeth, Nathan reported during one of their daily meetings. Max especially, he's been gnawing on everything in reach. We'll need to get some appropriate teething toys, and you should expect them to be fussier than usual. The emperor nodded, making notes on his personal tablet. I will clear my schedule for the next week. I wish to be available if they need additional comfort. His advisors looked pained. Your Majesty, you have the sector-wide economic summit which can be attended remotely. My children are teething. That takes precedence. Nathan hid a smile. The emperor, who had once spent weeks away from the palace for diplomatic missions, now refused to be gone for more than a few hours at a time. Parenthood had changed him in ways that were obvious to everyone who worked with him. He was more patient in negotiations, more willing to consider long-term consequences, more focused on building a better future rather than simply maintaining power. When the twins turned 1 year old, the celebration was unlike anything Nathan had ever imagined. The entire empire declared a holiday. Dignitaries from hundreds of worlds attended. The palace was decorated with lights and flowers from across 800 star systems, and Max and Lily, the guests of honor, spent most of the formal ceremony trying to eat their ceremonial crowns. Prince Maxian Valor, crown heir to the Valyrian Empire, the chief minister announced formally as Max was presented to the assembled crowd. The baby, dressed in tiny formal robes, looked at the thousands of people and promptly buried his face in the emperor's shoulder. Princess Liliana, Grace, crown heir to the Valyrian Empire, came the announcement for Lily. She was slightly braver, actually waving at the crowd with a dreamy smile. Nathan watched from his place of honor near the imperial family, Emma beside him in a beautiful dress that she'd picked out herself. He'd been given official titles and honors that he barely understood. Master of the Imperial Nursery, first companion to the crown heirs, honorary member of the imperial household. But the real honor was watching Max toddle over to him after the ceremony, arms outstretched, babbling Nana with absolute joy. It was Lily pulling on his sleeve to get his attention, wanting to show him the toy she'd been given. It was the Emperor clasping his shoulder and saying, "Thank you, my friend, for everything." Emma tugged on his hand. "Daddy, can we do the airplane thing at dinner, please? I want to show everyone." Nathan laughed. "I think the Imperial chefs might have something fancier plan than my airplane technique, baby girl, but it's the best. Everyone should know about the airplane." And sure enough, when Max and Lily got fussy during the formal dinner, Nathan found himself standing before an audience of the most powerful beings, 800 star systems, making airplane noises and swooping spoons through the air, while two toddlers giggled and ate their pured vegetables. The Favian ambassador looked scandalized. The Caerleon delegate seemed confused, but the Emperor was grinning and his children were eating, and that was all that mattered. "You see," the Emperor announced to the assembled dignitaries, "this is the human technique that saved my children's lives, the sacred airplane. We should all learn from Nathan Brooks and his people. They understand that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most profound." "It's really not that profound," Nathan muttered, but Emma shushed him. "Don't argue with the Emperor, Daddy. It's rude." As the twins grew into toddlers, they developed distinct personalities that kept Nathan constantly on his toes. Max was analytical and careful, studying every new toy or food with intense concentration before deciding whether it met his standards. He loved books and would sit for hours while Nathan or the Emperor read to him. His first complete sentence was "why," followed immediately by "but why," which became his favorite phrase for the next 6 months. Lily was adventurous and fearless, climbing everything in sight and giving Nathan several new gray hairs. She was charming too, with a smile that could get her out of almost any trouble. She loved music and would dance whenever she heard it, which led to palace protocol officers frantically trying to decide whether it was appropriate for a crown princess to dance to maintenance droids beeping patterns. "Let her dance," the Emperor said firmly when the debate reached his level. "My daughter's joy is more important than protocol." Emma remained their devoted big sister, now 7 years old and attending an advanced academy with children from across the empire. She still spent every free moment with the twins, teaching them games and songs and helping Nathan with their care. "Max won't share his blocks," she reported one afternoon, hands on her hips in a perfect imitation of authority. "I told him sharing is important, but he said he's using all of them." Nathan looked at the elaborate block structure Max had built. "What is it, buddy?" "A ship," Max said. "Seriously, like the big ones outside, with engines and everything." "That's really cool, but maybe Lily could help you build the engines. She's good at stacking." Max considered this with the gravity of someone deciding matters of galactic importance. "Okay, but she has to be careful. Engines are important." Crisis averted, Nathan thought with amusement. If only all diplomatic negotiations were this simple. When the twins were 3 years old, an incident occurred that would become legendary in palace lore. A delegation from the Zorvian Collective arrived for trade negotiations led by Ambassador Krex, of being known for his rigid adherence to protocol and his belief that humans were too primitive to be taken seriously in galactic affairs. The meeting was taking place in one of the Palac's formal Reception rooms, Nathan wasn't supposed to be there, but Max and Lily had insisted on seeing their father before his important meeting, and the Emperor had never been able to refuse his children anything, so Nathan found himself in the corner of the room, trying to keep two energetic 3-year-olds quiet while the Emperor conducted high negotiations. The Zorvian collective requires assurances, Krex was saying in his species clicking language, which Nathan's translator rendered into smooth English. Your empire's recent expansion has caused concern among our trade partners. Our expansion has been peaceful and mutually beneficial, the Emperor responded calmly. Every world that has joined the Valyrian Empire has done so willingly and has prospered from the association. So you claim, but we have heard troubling reports about your judgment, Emperor, specifically regarding your choice of caretakers for your heirs. The room went very quiet. Nathan felt every I turned toward him. I beg your pardon, the Emperor said, his voice dropping to dangerous levels. You have entrusted your children, the heirs, to your empire, to a human, a species barely beyond their own star system. This suggests questionable decision-making that gives us pause about any partnership. Nathan wanted to sink into the floor. This was exactly the kind of thing he'd worried about when he first took the job, that his presence would be seen as a liability, that his humanity would be used against the Emperor. But before the Emperor could respond, Max slipped from Nathan's grasp and marched right up to Ambassador Krex. You're being mean to Nana, Max said, his little voice clear and firm. That's not nice. Krex looked down at the small Valerie and child with obvious disdain. Return to your caretaker, young one. This is a discussion for adults. Nana is the best, Lily chimed in, joining her brother. He takes care of us and plays with us and makes the airplane the airplane. Krex's translator rendered his tone as deeply skeptical. I'll show you. Lily grabbed a small toy from a nearby table and swooped it through the air. Whoosh, open wide for the airplane. Max giggled, and without thinking about the fact that he was in the middle of critical trade negotiations, pretended to eat the toy airplane, making exaggerated nom nom sounds. The Zorvian delegation looked horrified. The Valyrian ministers looked mortified, but the Emperor was trying very hard not to laugh. You see, Ambassador, the Emperor said, his voice warm with affection as he looked at his children, this is precisely why Nathan Brooks is the perfect caretaker for my heirs. He has taught them joy. He has taught them to see people for who they are, not what species they belong to. And he has taught them quite clearly to stand up for those they care about. He stood, moving to join his children, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. My children are 3 years old, and already they understand loyalty, kindness, and courage better than many adults I have negotiated with. That is Nathan's doing. So if you have concerns about my judgment in hiring him, I suggest you consider what he has accomplished. My heirs are healthy, happy, and developing into exactly the kind of leaders this empire will need. Krex looked like he'd been slapped with a fish. I meant no offense to the crown heirs, your majesty, but you did mean offense to their caretaker, who they clearly love as family. That is offense enough. The Emperor's voice was still beneath the calm. Now shall we discuss trade agreements, or would you like to continue insulting members of my household? The negotiations continued But the power dynamic had shifted. Entirely, Nathan watched the emperor work, saw how he defended not just Nathan but the principle that people should be judged by their abilities and their character, not their species or origin. It was a lesson his children had already learned and demonstrated. After the delegation left, the emperor came over to where Nathan was sitting with the twins. I apologize that you were subjected to that, the emperor said. Not your fault, your majesty. Some people are just jerks. Jerks, Max repeated with relish, testing out the new word. That's not a nice word, buddy, Nathan said quickly. We don't say that about people. But you just said, do as I say, not as I do. One of the great hypocrisies of parenthood. The emperor laughed and scooped up both his children. You defended Nana very bravely today. I am proud of you both. Crex was being mean, Lily said seriously. Mean people need to be told they're mean. That's very true. Though perhaps in the future, let Daddy handle the ambassadors during negotiations. But we helped, Max protested. You did help. You reminded everyone what truly matters. That is always helpful. Emma appeared in the doorway, fresh from her lessons. Did I miss something exciting? The twins told off an ambassador, Nathan said with a grin. Without me. That's not fair. As the years continue to pass, the twins grew from toddlers into bright, curious children. Max remained studious and thoughtful, showing an early aptitude for engineering and science. He could spend hours taking apart toys to see how they worked, then putting them back together in new configurations. Lily developed a passion for diplomacy and languages, able to charm visiting dignitaries in their native tongues. By the time she was 5, Emma, now 10 years old, had grown into a confident, intelligent young woman who served as a bridge between the human and Valyrian cultures. In the palace, she tutored Valerie and children in human customs and helped new human workers adjust to palace life. She still helped with Max and Lily when Nathan needed an extra pair of hands, though they were getting too old for most of the baby tricks. But the airplane still worked. It would always work. One evening when the twins were 5 years old, Nathan found the emperor in the palace gardens watching the triple moons rise over the horizon. They start their formal education next month, the emperor said without preamble. Tutors, protocol lessons, leadership training, the beginning of their preparation for eventually ruling this empire. They'll do great, Nathan said, settling onto the bench beside him. They're smart kids, kind kids. You've raised them well. We have raised them well, the emperor corrected. You have been as much a parent to them as I have, Nathan. Perhaps more, given the hours you have devoted to their care. That's my job. It stopped being merely a job years ago. You love them as your own. Anyone can see that. Nathan couldn't deny it. He did love Max and Lily. They were part of his family as much as Emma was. He'd been there for their first steps, their first words, every milestone and moment of growth. He'd comforted them through nightmares, celebrated their triumphs, guided them through the challenges of childhood. I do love them, Nathan admitted. Is that problem? It is the opposite of a problem. It is exactly what I hoped for when I hired you, the emperor smiled. I have been considering the future, Nathan. When Max and Lily take the throne, they will need advisors they can trust. Absolutely. People who care about them as individuals, not their political Power, you've got decades before you. Need to worry about that, perhaps, but Valoran's plan in centuries. I want to ensure my children's future is secure. He turned to face Nathan directly. I want to offer you a permanent position. As first advisor to the crown heirs, it would come with significant authority and responsibility. You would help guide their education, their development as leaders, and eventually their rule. Nathan stared at him. Your Majesty, I'm not qualified to advise future emperors. I'm a guy who feeds babies and makes airplane noises. You are a man who sees people clearly, who values kindness and connection, who has raised 2 children. To be thoughtful and compassionate. Those are the exact qualities my empire needs in its advisors, the emperors. Expression was sincere. I'm not asking you to decide tonight, but think about it. You have already given my children an extraordinary gift. I am simply asking if you would consider continuing to do so as they grow. Nathan thought about Earth, where he'd been a struggling widower, barely making ends meet. He thought about the small apartment where he and Emma had lived, counting every credit. He thought about the night the twins wouldn't eat when Caller had dragged him into the nursery in desperation, and he thought about the family he'd found here, Emma thriving and happy, Max and Lily who called him Nana and ran to him with their problems and triumphs, the emperor who had become a genuine friend. The life they'd built in this place that had once seemed so foreign. I don't need to think about it, Nathan said. The answer is yes, of course it's yes. The emperor clasped his shoulder, the Valerian gesture of deep respect and affection. Thank you, my friend. My children are fortunate to have you. I'm the fortunate one, Your Majesty. You gave me and Emma a chance when we were nobody, a janitor and a 4-year-old. You saw past all that. I saw a father who loved his child enough to work the night shift so he could spend days with her. I saw someone who understood that the simplest act of care could solve the most complex problem. I saw exactly what my children needed. The emperor smiled. Though I will admit, I did not expect the airplane technique to become a permanent part of imperial protocol. Nathan laughed. Yeah, that wasn't exactly in my plan either. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the moons rise higher in the distance. Nathan could hear Emma's voice as she played with Max and Lily in one of the garden courtyards, their laughter echoing across the palace grounds. Next month, Max and Lily began their formal education. Nathan sat in on their lessons, not as their caretaker, but as their advisor and advocate. When a tutor tried to drill them on endless facts without context, Nathan suggested incorporating hands-on demonstrations. When protocol instructors demanded they memorize hundreds of rules for formal occasions, Nathan reminded everyone that the twins were still only 5 and maybe they could space out the lessons. They need to learn, the protocol master insisted. They are crown heirs there. Also kindergartners, Nathan countered. Push them too hard and they'll start to hate learning. Give them space to be kids and they'll absorb everything naturally. The emperor attending the meeting remotely sided with Nathan. My children will learn what they need to learn, but they will not be robbed of their childhood in the process. Nathan's recommendations stand. Max flourished under a curriculum that let him take things apart and understand how they worked. Lily excelled when given the freedom to practice diplomacy through games and role-playing rather than Rote memorization, they were still. Children still prone to tantrums and sibling squabbles and refusing to eat their vegetables, but they were growing into remarkable young people. Emma, meanwhile, had discovered a passion for xenobiology and was already taking advanced courses at the Imperial University. Despite being only 10, she still made time for her little siblings, as she called Max and Lily, often helping them with homework or taking them on educational adventures through the palace. Did you know, Emma told them one afternoon, that the moon blossoms in the garden are actually from Earth? Originally, they were brought here 200 years ago as a gift. Really? Lily leaned in, fascinated. They're from Nana's home. And mine, Emma confirmed. Earth is amazing. Someday we'll take you to visit. Can we see where you lived? Max asked. Sure, it's a little town called Millbrook, not fancy like the palace, but it's nice. There's a park with a big oak tree. Nathan listened to his daughter describe their old home to the Valerie and twins and felt a bittersweet pang. He missed Earth sometimes, missed the familiar gravity, the specific quality of sunlight, the sounds and smells of home. But this was home now too. This palace, this family, this life they'd built. When the twins turned 7, they were deemed old enough to begin attending certain public functions. First was a charity gala supporting education initiatives across the empire. Max and Lily were nervous, dressed in their formal robes, rehearsing the greetings they'd been taught. What if I forget what to say? Max worried. Then you smile and say something kind, Nathan advised. People mostly just want to know you care. The fancy words don't matter as much as the sincerity. But the protocol master said, the protocol master has never been 7 years old and nervous. I have. Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. Just be yourself. You're both amazing kids. Let people see that. Lily grabbed Nathan's hand. Will you be there? I'll be right beside you the whole time. If you need me, just look over. I'll be there. The gala was a glittering affair with hundreds of attendees. Nathan watched with pride as Max and Lily greeted guests, their nervousness gradually fading as they found their rhythm. Lily discovered she could make people laugh with her observations, while Max impressed the scientific community representatives with his thoughtful questions about their work. And when a small Favian child brought by her ambassador parent looked overwhelmed by the crowd, Lily immediately went over and took her hand. I know it's scary, Lily said kindly. There's so many people, but it's okay. Want to come meet my brother? He's really nice. The Favian child nodded shyly, and Lily led her over to Max, who immediately started explaining the decorations and making her feel included. The ambassador, witnessing this, looked at Nathan with newfound respect. Your teaching is evident in the crown. Heirs, she said, compassion before protocol. The galaxy could benefit from more of that philosophy. They're good kids, Nathan said simply. I just try not to mess them up too much. As the twins approached their 10th birthday, preparations began for their official presentation to the Empire, a ceremony that would mark them as recognized heirs and future leaders. It would be broadcast across all 800 star systems. Moment of tremendous importance. Max and Lily were feeling the pressure. The ceremony involved complex rituals, long speeches they had to memorize, and hours of standing in formal regalia while various officials pledged their loyalty. I don't want to do it, Max said one evening 2 weeks before the ceremony. It's too much. What if I mess up in front of everyone? Nathan sat down next to him. You know what? It's okay to be scared. This is scary. It's a huge responsibility, but I'm supposed to be brave. I'm a crown heir. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. And you know what helps? What? Remembering why you're doing it. You're not standing up there just to recite speeches. You're standing up there to show the empire that their future leaders care about them, that you're real people who will work to make their lives better. That's what matters. Lily joined them, looking equally worried. What if people don't like us? Then they don't like you, and that's okay. You can't please everyone. Sweetness, you just have to be true to yourselves and do your best. That's all anyone can ask. Will you be there? Lily asked, echoing her question from 3 years ago. Front row center, right next to Emma and your dad. We'll all be there, cheering you on. The day of the presentation arrived with all the pomp and ceremony the Valyrian Empire could muster. The palace was transformed into a venue worthy of the historic occasion. Representatives from every member world attended in person or via holographic projection. News crews from hundreds of systems broadcast the event live, and in the center of it all, 2 10-year-old children stood in elaborate formal robes, looking very small and very brave. Nathan watched from his place beside Emma and the Emperor as Max and Lily went through the ceremony flawlessly. They recited their oaths of service to the Empire. They received the symbolic regalia of their positions. They greeted dignitaries with grace and composure, but the moment that everyone would remember came at the end, when Max was supposed to give a prepared speech about duty and honor. He started the speech, got about 3 sentences in, then stopped. I'm supposed to talk about duty, Max said, his voice carrying across the vast hall, about honor and service and all the important things a crown heir should care about. And those things are important, but there's something more important that I want to say. He looked directly at Nathan. 10 years ago, my sister and I wouldn't eat. We were scared and we didn't understand the world, and all the important people trying to help us couldn't figure out what we needed. Then a human janitor came and made airplane noises and talked to us like we were people, and everything changed. Lily stepped forward, joining her brother. Nana taught us that being important isn't about titles or power. It's about how you treat people. It's about kindness and patience and making silly noises to help someone feel safe. So, when we rule this empire someday, Max continued, we're going to remember that. We're going to remember that the simplest acts of care matter most, that every person, no matter where they come from or what their job is, deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. Because that's what Nana taught us. Lily finished, and it's the most important lesson we've ever learned. The hall was silent for a moment, then the Emperor began to applaud. Emma joined him, tears streaming down her face, and within seconds, every being in that vast space was on their feet, applauding too. Children who had just thrown away their prepared remarks to speak from the heart about a janitor who made airplane noises. Nathan was crying too. He realized happy tears, proud tears, overwhelmed tears. He'd come to this world as a widower struggling to provide for his daughter. He'd taken a job mopping floors because it was all he could get, and somehow impossibly he'd ended up here, part of a family, part of history, part of something bigger than he'd ever imagined. After the ceremony, in the relative quiet of the family's private quarters, the twins practically tackled Nathan with hugs. "Did we do okay?" Lily asked. "You did perfectly," Nathan said, his voice thick. "I'm so proud of you both. We wanted everyone to know," Max said seriously. "To know what you mean to us." The Emperor joined them, placing a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "My children speak truth. You changed more than their lives, Nathan Brooks. You changed the future of this empire. When they rule, they will do so with compassion and wisdom, because you taught them to see the person before the position." "I just fed some babies," Nathan said, echoing his words from a decade ago. "You did so much more than that, and the galaxy is better for it." Emma hugged her father tightly. "We're really lucky, Daddy." "Yeah, baby girl. We really are." The years that followed were full and rich. Emma graduated from the Imperial University with honors xenobiology at age 16 and immediately began working on conservation projects across the empire. Max and Lily continued their education, growing into thoughtful, capable young leaders who genuinely cared about the people they would one day govern. They still came to Nathan with their problems, still sought his advice when they struggled with difficult decisions, and yes, occasionally, when they were having a particularly bad day, Nathan would make airplane noises and bring them their favorite comfort foods, and they would laugh at how ridiculous it was that these gestures still worked. When Max was 17 and Lily was about to graduate from her advanced diplomatic training, Nathan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, from Earth to the stars, from janitor to imperial advisor, from broken widower to father of 3 remarkable children. He was in the gardens when Lily found him, settling onto the bench beside him with the easy comfort of someone who had done this 1,000 times, thinking deep thoughts. "Nana, just remembering when you and Max were babies, screaming your heads off, refusing to eat. I had no idea what I was doing. I just tried what had worked with Emma and hoped for the best, and it worked. You saved us. You saved me too. You know, both of you and your father. After your mom died, Emma, I was lost. I was going through the motions, but I wasn't really living. Then this crazy emperor offered me a job feeding his kids, and suddenly I had purpose again. Had a reason to keep going." Lily leaned against his shoulder. "I'm glad he found you. I can't imagine life without you." "Me neither, sweetness." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the moons rise, just as Nathan and the Emperor had done so many years before. "Max and I have been talking," Lily said eventually, "about the future, about when we eventually take the throne. That's still a long way off. Your father is healthy and ruling well, we know, but we want to be prepared, and we want you to know that when that time comes, we want you there, not just as an advisor, as family, as the person who taught us everything that really matters. I'll be ancient by then, so humans live a long time now, especially with Valoran medical technology. You'll probably be around to see our kids." Nathan had to laugh at that. "I'm not sure the galaxy is ready for more imperial children being fed with airplane noises." "Oh, it absolutely is. We're making it a official imperial tradition. Your Protocol masters will have a collective. Heart attack, good, maybe it'll teach them that rules aren't as important as connection, more comfortable silence, filled with the sounds of the garden at night. Somewhere in the palace, Max was likely taking apart some piece of technology to understand it better. Emma was probably reviewing data for her latest conservation project. The Emperor was in his study, managing an empire, while always keeping his family at the center of his decisions, and Nathan was here in a garden on an alien world, watching moons he'd never imagined existed rise over a horizon that had become home. Thank you, Lily, he said softly. For what? For not eating 10 years ago, for being stubborn babies who needed someone to make airplane noises, for giving me a second chance at life. Lily hugged him tightly. Thank you for seeing us as babies instead of heirs, for teaching us that kindness matters most, for being our Nana. They stayed there until the moons were high in the sky, family in every way that mattered, connected not by blood but by love, patience, and the enduring power of one simple truth. Sometimes the most important thing in the galaxy is knowing when to make airplane noises for a hungry child. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one, and I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug and see you in the next.